Next on AM 1480 WLEA, the Newsmaker Show. Here's Brian O'Neill.
And here we are on a Tuesday morning, and we're saying hello to Alfred University history professor, longtime history professor, Dr. Gary Ostrower. Good morning, Gary.
Good morning, Brian. How are you doing?
Doing well. How are you doing today?
Well, I got out for some early golf. I was finished by about 7:30, and I scored the second best score of the season. So I'm feeling pretty good right now.
Hey, that's all right. Second best for you or for everybody at the golf course?
Well, for me, and no serious golfer is going to be all that impressed with my second best score, I assure you.
Okay, let's start out. Actually, let's start out. I'm going to read from Senator Schumer's Facebook page. Senator Chuck Schumer is saying, quote, and he's talking about the Russia story that broke in the New York Times over the weekend. If we've learned anything from the past 3 years, it's that President Trump is inclined to ignore or forgive Putin's abuses. If Russian intelligence is supporting a shadow campaign to kill U.S. troops, there must be swift, strong consequences for Putin and his cronies. I got a lot of questions on this. Senator Gillibrand calling for an investigation. The conservatives are saying back, what did you want Trump to do? Go to war with Russia? The conservatives are also... Well, let me get your response to what I've given you so far, Dr. Ostrower.
I find this to be an incredible story. If Barack Obama had done what is alleged that President Trump has done, there would be conservatives, there would be Republicans calling for his impeachment. I don't know, I can't think of an episode in American history where a president has acted so irresponsibly. And it raises a number of different questions. One question, of course, has to do with simple integrity and truth. Initially, the president said that he had no information about this, that he had never heard of this, that the vice president had not heard of this, that his national security advisor had not heard of this. But, of course, we now know that they had all heard of this. The National Security Council had a meeting in March, specifically on this subject. We are also learning that some of this information had come to American intelligence way back in 2019. It was fairly well known in Afghanistan. And so, if the president is not going to level with us, and he has certainly not leveled with us on many, many things, it just kind of deepens, I think, the corrosiveness in the way in which he is, dealing with American democracy. Democracy cannot thrive. It cannot exist even unless there is truth on the part of government officials. Now, that's not to say that everyone is going to tell the truth all the time, or that you're going to always get all of the truth all of the time. But when the Washington Post can quite literally identify over 19,000 times when the president has either told false statements or made misleading statements to the American public, we have plenty, I think, to worry about. In this particular case, I think it's just astounding that American troops being targeted by the Taliban based on bounties that were given by a government not involved in that contest, in that fight, is just is astounding. That the United States would then, that the President of the United States would take no action against the Russians once we knew about this. And we know for sure that the President had been informed by his daily briefing statements that he would not only take no action, but that he would invite the Russians into the G7, to become a member of that G7 conference of economic powerhouses, in Europe. It defies explanation. And if Jim Mattis, if General Mattis If General McMaster, who had been head of the National Security Council, Mattis, of course, who had been Secretary of Defense, had they been in the cabinet at the time that this information was revealed to them, I cannot imagine. I simply can't imagine that there would not have been serious consequences. At the very, very least, I think, if the president did nothing, they would have resigned, and they would have resigned very, very publicly about this. So, once again, I think, it says something about the nature of the presidency. But let me go back to that Schumer statement. What Schumer is saying is, or he's kind of raising a question, although he didn't do it explicitly. And the question is, why, when it comes to Russia, why has the president never made a seriously critical statement about the conduct of the Russians, about the conduct of President Putin? What do the Russians have on this president? Is it information about money laundering? Is it information about, the kind of stuff that appeared in the Steele dossier having to do with, sexual issues? Is it information having to do with, favors that the Russian government has provided to Trump economically? We don't know. And we're certainly not going to even have a hint as to what the answer is, so long as the president refuses to reveal, to open up his income taxes. The point that I'm making here is that something's going on. Is the president a Russian agent? I certainly don't think so. I doubt very, very much whether that's the case, but at least it's plausible. It's not crazy to ask the question any longer. And I think this is where we are. It's a very, very strange position for the U.S. to be in light of the information that is coming from what the president calls fake news, but that news is anything but fake. It's being verified again and again and again by people in the American intelligence community.
Talking to Dr. Gary Ostrower here on a Tuesday. The Military Times reported a month ago that U.S. troops will be scaled down to 8,500 troops in Afghanistan by July 15th of this year. Question for you, Dr. Ostrower. Will this report out of the New York Times from this weekend make it so the troops get pulled out faster and completely from Afghanistan?
I doubt whether it will. It might even have the opposite effect. It's very hard to judge how this president is going to react. Obviously, he wants to get out of Afghanistan, as do I think most Americans want to get out of Afghanistan. We have been fighting a very, very futile kind of a war. That's futile, not feudal, over the last, how many years? Since 2001, so we're there for almost 19 years now. This also has longer-term effects, not the least of which is to what extent can we trust the Taliban? To what extent can we trust the very, very kind of promises that they are making as part of the peace negotiations between the U.S. on one hand and the Taliban? Lots of big question marks here, and we're not going to know the answer to these things for 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 more years.
Talking to Dr. Gary Ostrower. Before we move on to the topic of masks, Dr. Ostrower, I did have one more question on, and maybe more than one question actually is occurring to me now. Former administration official Sebastian Gorka says that Trump is not presented with any unverified info. The implication there is that the story about the Russian bounty there was unverified. What do you make of that?
I think it's ridiculous. I think it's been very well verified by this point. And that's why finally, members of the American intelligence community, because they have been ignored by the White House, have gone public. That is to say, they've leaked this information to the press. The people who wrote this story, who broke this story in the New York Times, are Pulitzer Prize winners. The fact of the matter is that you do not win a Pulitzer Prize unless you are a very, very good reporter. And the New York Times knows exactly how explosive this kind of thing is. And therefore, you can bet your life that they checked and they double-checked and they double-checked and they double-checked. I don't know how long they had the story before they finally went with it. But I have no reason to believe anything that the President of the United States says about his lack of information or about the unverifiable, quality of the intelligence, or for that matter, Sebastian Gorka, who has been a kind of knee-jerk defender of the president since the day that the president took office in 2017.
COVID-19 masks, Dr. Gary Ostrower. Your thoughts on masks now at this point? And today's Tuesday, June 30th. We've been wearing masks for weeks, really months now. What do you think of the mask situation in New York State?
Well, in New York State, people for the most part have been wearing masks, although less lately. Brian, I was in a couple of stores recently just doing traditional shopping. In one, an area grocery store, about 98, 99% of the shoppers were wearing masks, but in another store, only about maybe 80% were wearing masks. And that's a significant enough difference to, get me a little bit worried, especially since in that second store, many of those who were wearing masks were wearing them below their noses, which really doesn't do anyone any good whatsoever. We have had in New York State, we were the hot spot. We had a very, very high number of people who were suffering from COVID, especially down in the metropolitan area. Today, the numbers have dropped. We are one of the states with the lowest positivity, what we call positivity. That means the number of people who are testing positive for this. The numbers of people who are dying today, much, much, much reduced from what it was back in March and certainly in April and early May. I think that's a very, very good story. And I think that if you want to know why we are in so much better shape than we originally were, it's because we wore masks and because we socially distanced, because we took it seriously. And you have to give credit. Whatever else you say about, Governor Cuomo, you have to give credit to his leadership in respect to this. We're safe, much, much safer than we were, precisely because we were wearing those masks and we were socially distancing. But in other areas, people weren't doing that. In Texas, in Arizona, and many other states, they, kind of took the cues from the White House when the president said this whole thing is really not very serious. When he said these cases are going to disappear, we have 15 cases, and it's going to go back down to zero, he said, as a miracle. Too many people, listened to him and believed him, and consequently they did not wear the mask that they should have. And we now know what's happening, back in those states. We are now facing the largest number, the highest number of cases in, since the epidemic began. It's not happening here in the East. It's happening in the Southwest especially. Texas had more cases yesterday than they have had at any time since the pandemic began. Same thing with Arizona, and in other states in the South and Georgia and so forth, we're seeing the numbers skyrocket. Florida is seeing those numbers skyrocket to the point where even the governor of Florida, who is very, very, very late in coming to argue that people should wear masks and that people should socially distance, and who opened up the beaches, opened up businesses long before it was really wise to do so. In Florida, those numbers are going up to the point where finally, even the governor now is saying we have to close down once again. And I find it interesting that even in New York State and in New Jersey, where the numbers are looking so very, very good, we may wind up postponing. I think that, from what I've heard, we're going to wind up postponing some, or at least slowing down some of the, quote, opening up of businesses. And the reason is that we are very, very conscious of what's happening elsewhere. We are still in the first wave. We haven't even hit the second wave of this pandemic. And I think we know exactly how very, very dangerous this whole thing is. One more thing I want to say, which I'm not a microbiologist, but I was reading something in a medical journal just recently that had been sent to me, and it was an article about a change in the virus itself. These viruses change. A virus may mutate, if you will, and the virus apparently has slightly mutated up to this point. Mutated in the sense that while it's not more lethal or less lethal than it was, it may in fact be more contagious than it was. So, we may hear more about this, but it's all the more reason why people should wear masks. And let me say one very, very last thing about wearing masks. When you wear a mask, it doesn't protect you very much against the virus, but it does protect other people in the event that you have the virus. You may be asymptomatic. In other words, you may not have any actual symptoms, the cough or whatever, a fever even, but you may still test positive. By wearing that mask, you are protecting other people. It's a kind of courtesy. It's a kind of respect that you show for members of your family, and that you show for your neighbors, and that you show for other shoppers, whether you're in Wegmans or Lowe's or any other large or small store in this area. I think I just find it to be crassly selfish for people not to wear masks when they certainly have the ability to know why they should be wearing masks. I give Anthony Fauci a pat on the back. I'd like to see Anthony Fauci as the next president of the United States.
We're talking with Dr. Gary Ostrower. I have one more question, but I want to I want to take a break really quick and check the forecast. When we get back, we'll talk about the possibility that conservatives talk about this a lot. The Democrats don't. The liberals don't. The possibility of Governor Andrew Cuomo being drafted in a race for the president. Stay with us.
Watching the Hornell fireworks on Saturday night, July 4th? Be listening to WLEA Saturday night, 9 p.m. to 10 p.m. to hear patriotic music. AM 1480 and FM 1069 will be playing the great marches of John Philip Sousa Saturday night, 9 p.m. to 10 p.m. So if you're in your car that night, somewhere in and around Hornell, or on one of the hills surrounding the valley, be sure to listen to AM 1480 and FM 1069.
Checking in now with the meteorologist, Rob Carolyn.
Weather of Rob Carolyn would it be, Brian? Yes, it is a little cloudy this morning. Some cloudiness coming in from the east associated with a big storm sitting north of Boston this morning on the coast of northeastern Massachusetts, southeastern New Hampshire. It's been able to throw some cloudiness all the way back into the southern tier. You go west of our area right now, and it's generally clear. Niagara, Buffalo, Jamestown, Dunkirk. Right now it looks like out to Batavia, but once you go from Rochester through our area down to the south, we're right on the edge of the cloud. So best we'll do today, Brian, is partial sun. There may be enough moisture in the atmosphere that we squeeze out a shower or a thunderstorm in a few isolated spots later today. Temperatures will be up to 75 to 80. Sunrise earlier this morning was at 5:37. The sun sets tonight at 8:51. Tonight we're partly cloudy, and we should fall back to about 60 or 65. Still have some moisture feeding into the area from the northeast and east tomorrow due to that upper level low. Again, there may be an isolated shower or storm tomorrow afternoon. It's warm, 80 to 85. System moves out to sea tomorrow night, so our skies will clear, 60 or 65. Lots of sun, turning warmer for Thursday, 85 to 90. And Friday looks partly sunny and humid with the chance of a late-day storm, Brian. Temperatures 85 to 90. Looks like it stays warm into the upcoming weekend.
Back with Alfred University history professor Dr. Gary Ostrower. You mentioned Governor Andrew Cuomo in the last segment, and that got me thinking, Dr. Ostrower. Recent Zogby and Rasmussen polls showed that a lot of voters, including many Democrats, think that Biden is out of it. The conservatives are pushing this. The liberals really aren't, and I wanted to get your thoughts. Is it possible the conservatives are right that the Democrats could dump Biden for somebody like an Andrew Cuomo?
Are we talking about the same Andrew Cuomo who said that if you don't like masks, you're going to hate wearing a ventilator? Yeah, I think there are probably plenty of people who would like to see him running, but he's not going to become the Democratic candidate. I think just 2 weeks ago, in some of the later primaries that we had, Joe Biden finally received enough votes on the first ballot to be nominated by the Democrats. Now, if it had gone to a second ballot, if, let's say, Biden even was short by one vote, it's entirely possible that on the second ballot he'd begin to bleed some of those delegates, and Cuomo might become a serious candidate. It's just not going to happen. Okay, Biden's going to be the Democratic candidate. Should he be? Well, the fact is that he has the support, so of course he should be. Will he be an effective candidate? That remains to be seen. Certainly, he doesn't have the, if you will, kind of the charisma, at least for some people, of President Trump. He's not very vocal. But I think that there may be a lot of people today, especially females who are thinking we want someone who is a little bit more stable than this President Trump, someone who's a little bit less insulting, someone who's a lot more honest, and someone who happens to be a decent human being. And I think that in spite of the fact that Biden is certainly not exciting, okay, this guy is not going to excite any audience. This may be his time. I think it's more likely that President Trump will not be the Republican candidate in the election of 2020. And I think that what we were talking about earlier, Brian, the issue of the bounties, the fact that the president looked the other way and then denied that there was, in fact, an issue here at all. That could be very, very damaging to him. I think that members of the American military, especially the officer corps of the American military, must be furious to hear, to know what he has done. So while we say that, the president could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and he wouldn't lose any of his supporters, I'm not so sure that's true here. And I think that if I'm correct about that, and enough Republican senators and representatives come to think that he becomes a political risk to them, that their re-election may be in jeopardy, I think that you may find quite a number of them abandoning him and supporting someone like maybe Nikki Haley or someone like Senator Tom Cotton from Arkansas. But I would not be surprised. I would not be shocked at all to discover that by September, Donald Trump is not going to be the candidate of the Republican Party. And it will split the party if that happens.
If that happened, Dr. Ostrower, I don't think that the Republicans could win.
You mean
if it's not Trump? I think it would split things so badly.
I think you're right. But I think that the Republicans are increasingly worried that they will not win if he is the candidate. And that's the real dilemma. I mean, I don't know. If I was giving advice, well, maybe I shouldn't give advice on this one. But I think that the Republicans are in a very, very difficult situation precisely because the president is so irresponsible and his unfitness for office is becoming more and more evident every single week.
With that, we have to leave it. Unfortunately, we did not get to this day in history, but next time, hopefully when we have you back, Dr. Ostrower, we can cover some of that.
You bet. Thank you very much for having me here.
Always good to have you, Dr. Gary Ostrower, longtime Alfred University history professor.